The chief of the Bureau of Demon Management tells the people in the territory that there is a death territory on floor 4. However, they refuse to believe him due to the fact that they are of the opinion that the Bureau is trying to monopolize the level for themselves. And that really seems unfair to the others. They refuse to stay in their assigned place, and one of them claims that there is no death territory outside, and he will go there regardless, forcing the chief to inform them that it isn't the case that he is really stopping them from leaving, but they must know that if they leave, they will have to bear the consequences by themselves. And the consequence may not be easy, and it could include death. It's not the case that they all don't know what evil the death territory holds, and they are all aware of the risks. One of them looks irritated by all the warnings. He scorns the chief and claims the chief is only giving them such ridiculous warnings because the chief thinks he is scared of him, and he wants to prove that he isn't scared. As the silent crowd stands there thinking of what to do, he summons his courage and tells the chief that he will enter floor 4, and he doesn't think there is a death territory there. In fact, he admits to wanting to bear all the consequences that may come from his disobedience, claiming that he is not scared of the Bureau, and asks if they think he is scared of them. He asks them if they think he is a coward who they can scare away with annoying words that hold no water, and says that he isn't a coward. The chief doesn't know what more he can do to convince him, and he eventually resigns himself to fate. He announces to the other people standing in front of him and wanting to go to floor 4 that if they really want to go despite all of his warnings, then they are allowed to do what they wish as he will let them go. Upon hearing that there is a free door and they are free to leave, the others also try to contemplate leaving for floor 4 despite knowing the risk attached to it. They ask themselves if they should leave. They wonder if there is really a death territory anywhere because it doesn't look like it, and they doubt the chief's word as regards the death territory. The chief doesn't make an attempt to convince them. It seems that there is freedom of choice for anyone. The door is opened and they can all choose life or death. As they all think and try to make their decision, the first person who had proceeded to the death territory screams loudly, and the sound of his terror and the look of it is the confirmation they all need. They see him screaming like a baby held in a circle and trapped in it. It closes all the doubts the other members have, and they have no choice but to follow the advice of the chief. The first rebel runs back to the fold. He is injured in his eyes and screams, "Mutated! Mutated!" Well, that should be the punishment for the rebellions. And he is so scared that he jumps back to join the team. He returns to apologize. He bows down to the chief as he looks at him. He screams that the death territory is very scary and filled with mutated monsters. Upon seeing him, all the monsters go crazy and they start to chase after him. Fortunately, he has luck on his side that day, so he runs as fast as he can and tries to rejoin the team. If he didn't make such an attempt, he would have died as an example to the others who could have decided to do the same as he had done. The others who were doubting the chief's words get the confirmation they all need. They are shocked that all the monsters have really mutated. They scream that there is really a death territory out there, and the chief isn't lying to them. They trust and obey the chief without a doubt. It seems they all want to live after all. Trying to confirm their doubts about him, the chief asks them if any of them still have doubts about him. He asks if any of them still wants to leave as the door to leave isn't closed, so they can still leave. After confirming that they all trust him enough to follow his commands, he suggests that everyone should not log in, nor should they come to floor 4. All they have to do is wait for the demon territory to completely disappear. Then they can all come to the floor. It's not like he's trying to monopolize the floor to himself alone. They all conclude that since they can't log in for a few days, all they have to do is go offline and rest. They all open their tablets and they log out respectively. Rakshasa, who has mistakenly fallen among the crowds, looks in awe, thinking of what to do. He concludes that since it isn't too late, he can't go, so he has to join them and go back. He also opens his tablet and makes the decision of whether he should log out or not. He decides that since the following day is a Saturday and there is no school, he can also log out. Meanwhile, on another floor in the dungeon, a warrior fights the monsters which have approached him. The roars and the shouts of the monsters echo in his ears. The mutated monsters, who are now giants standing in front of his dwarf self, approach him. It's a decision of either life or death, so he also brings out his sword to fight. He uses his sword to cut off the monster's legs, and they both battle with the swords. He eventually uses his sword to hit his head, and the giant zombie dies. After the giant zombie dies, he sees a purple crystal in front of him, and he goes nearer to the crystal and picks it up. When he does that, he receives a message in his tablet. He taps his tablet to see the message he has. he sees a notification that a very dreadful human monster called the Death Kiss, which has an organization and is prominent for killing young warriors, has been successfully killed by Rakshasa. He thinks about Rakshasa, especially since Rakshasa is a young class warrior who has just awakened. He comments that Rakshasa is a very interesting guy. He just can't seem to predict his strength and skills. He looks at the monster he has killed on the floor, and he sees that the monster is the SS floor boss. He continues his journey on the floor, hoping to kill as many monsters as he finds on that floor. The floor is now in ruins, with all the buildings broken and the street tattered. On the other hand, Zhang Zi is in his home. And at home, he serves his younger sister, Zhao Feng, with food on their table. He advises her to stay with him and do her homework while he goes out for a while. He is jobless and he is looking for work that will assist him in maintaining their homes. So his aim that morning is to go out and get a job. He tries to explain to Zhao Feng that their friend, Zhang Panpan, says that her cousin has a job, and she thinks that he is a very good fit for that job, so he's going to check the job out. Zhao Feng tries to figure out what he is saying with her loaf of bread in her hands. She repeats his statement and asks him if he is really trying to get a job from Zhang Panpan's cousin. She tells him that she has heard a strange rumor that the work Zhang Panpan's cousin does is quite dangerous and risky. He reassures her that he's going to be fine, asking her to stop worrying about him and telling her that she should know at that point that her big brother is very strong. So all she has to do for him is just stay home and take care of herself. He will go and come back to her in an instant. After saying this, he attempts to leave the house and find Zhang Panpan at their designated meeting point. Before he goes, she tells him that he should be fine and that he should take care of himself. He goes to the ruins where he has planned to meet Zhang Panpan, and to his uttermost shock, it doesn't look like there is anyone or anything hanging out in that location. He scratches his head in confusion and he takes his phone, trying to confirm if that's the location he is meant to meet her. After checking his phone's location, he confirms that the location is correct, and it's not as if he's lost his way, but he just can't find Zhang Panpan. He wonders where she is and he just stands there wondering. Just as he thinks of what to do, Zhang Panpan calls out for him and tells him to come over. She is dressed in a school dress with a tie, and she waves to him, calling him to come closer to her so she can take him there. He goes nearer to her, and she takes him to a secret warehouse. She tells him to come inside, and her cousin is inside. As he peeps inside the place, he says the place seems to have been abandoned for a long time, and reluctantly he enters the building, and he sees about 4 men trying to strategize for their next plan. He joins them with Zhang Panpan, and she calls out for her brother, telling him that she has brought the person she told him she would bring, and Zhang Zi is the person she had recommended for him. She also introduces Zhang Zi to her cousin Lu Kai. They all look at each other, and Lu Kai breaks the silence. He tells Zhang Zi that he has heard from his sister that she is quite skilled, and he is very strong, but he lacks money. He stretches his hand outside to greet Zhang Zi, and he asks Zhang Zi if he has any interest in joining his team. Since Zhang Zi needs the money and they have the money he needs, joining the team seems to be the smart thing to do. He is, however, scared about what they do since he doesn't know what they do. He tells Lu Kai that he really needs to find a job, but he doesn't know what job they do. They announce to him that their job is to go to the Fallen Zone. They are going to the ruins of the war where the monster is. Zhang Zi is scared. His words echo in his head as he asks Lu Kai for the second time to be sure he really means it. They all know how scary the Falling Zone is. It's a no-go area, and the government has also blocked it for everyone who isn't a warrior. Lu Kai explains further. He tells Zhang Zi that he should know that recently, the Devil's Territory's monsters invaded, and they had destroyed several cities. These cities have fallen. However, former occupants of the city, some of which are dead or have escaped, have several pieces of jewelry, antiques, paintings, and other expensive things. So the Fallen Zones have not only monsters, but also several treasures, like jewelry, antiques, paintings, and so much more. And some very wealthy people are interested in those valuable things, and they want to put them in their collection, so they need people like them to get it for them. He tells Zhang Zi that the job is very dangerous, and that they will encounter several monsters. Not only that, but the National Security Bureau has also prohibited normal people who do not have powers from entering the fallen area. So in a nutshell, what they're planning to do is illegal, but they need the money just like him. So they're doing it for the money, and they do not care about how dangerous the job is. The gang asks him to join them to make money since he clearly needs the money. Another member of the team, Fang Zi, tries to sell the mission to him. He tells him that if he follows them, he will get 300,000 per trip, since each trip is about 300,000 for each of them. He asks Zhang Zi what he thinks about the price, wondering if he wants to join them. He uses his hands to signify how sweet the tip is, and sincerely, no one should be able to let go of such privileges, especially someone like Zhang Zi with a sister that he has to take care of. He thinks about his options and declares that 300,000 is sincerely not a small amount. He needs the money, and his little sister cannot wait any longer. So he has to make a choice irrespective of what he believes in. His sister has a kidney problem, and he believes that he needs that money. Throughout the period of the monster's invasion, he has been hunting, and he has been earning money by selling magic soul orb, which he had gotten with his skills. A sister, Sister Jiang, had also given him 500,000, and right now he has a total of 800,000. So if he gets that 300,000, he will have more than enough to help with his sister's kidney treatment charges. He decides to join them considering the need he has for money, and it seems like a good deal to him. As he accepts to join them, Lu Kai comes closer to him to hug him. He calls him a good lad and comments that he is really brave for agreeing to join them. He tells him that there is more news he needs to hear, and with this particular mission, the danger is extremely high, and their reward if they can successfully go on that trip has been doubled. So their reward for that mission is 3 million. The other colleagues scream. They are excited about the price. It means that if they divide their 3 million into 5 equal parts, all of them will get a lump sum of 600,000 each. While the others are really excited about the money, Zhang Zi knows the higher the money, the higher the risk. And double money means that they will be looking for something very risky. He asks Lu Kai what exactly they're looking for. In response, they tell him that they're going to look for a painting from the 5th Dynasty period, and their location is the Jiangdong Museum. Their mission is the following day, and they must meet by 4 a.m. They advise him not to be late. He returns home to prepare, and the following day, as he wakes up, he sees that his sister Zhao Feng is awake. He asks her why she is awake that early, as it is unlike her, and he asks her if her health is okay. He sees her preparing their breakfast, and she holds a plate of food in her hand. She tells him that her health isn't an issue, and she knows he's going to work very early that day, so she decided to wake up early too and make breakfast for him. He looks at the table that has been prepared before him, and he sees an apple. He asks her where the apple came from, since he knows that they do not have them at home, so she tells him that she got the apple from their new next-door neighbor. It was a gift. She also comments that their next-door neighbor is a kind uncle. Zhang Zi is shocked. They are in a period of scarcity, and everything is scarce. There is a great lack of resources, and the lack is greater with fresh vegetables and fruits, so the least amount a person can pay for 2 fresh apples will not be less than a few $100s. He eats his bread and tells his sister that the neighbor is really generous. He tells Zhao Feng that she can actually eat the apple, but she should remember his instruction that she shouldn't accept gifts from strangers casually. He tells her he will be leaving for work. She tells him that she remembers his instructions and she will be careful. As he walks to the location, she comments about the danger of the operation. He says that he knows the operation is dangerous, so before he slept the night before, he absorbed all the magic soul orb he can so he can get more energy. It turns out he is Rakshasa. He looks into his strength. He has 110 HP, he has 120 vitality, and his damage level is about 4-14. He has a 15 speed level, and his attributes include strength. He has a 14 strength level, which is much more than that of normal people, as the strength level of normal people is 10. His physique is 11, and again that is more than that of normal people, as the normal level is 10. For his mind, he has 12, and the normal level is also 10. For agility, he has 15, which is 5 levels more than that of normal people. He also has undistributed attribute points, and his skills are Summon Technique level 1, and he is of the Triple S rank. He has 0 experience, and he is a newbie adventurer. He sees he has 14 strengths, and sincerely, he hasn't tested his fist. He thinks his fist is at least 1,000 kg. He looks at his agility and wonders if he is able to fight a monster if he encounters a monster. He concludes that he hopes everything goes smoothly, and he hopes he won't encounter any monster or anything that is too much for him to fight. He gets to the city wall, and he looks out for his new team members. As he searches for them, they call out for him, telling him that they are around the corner. As he goes to meet them, Lu Kai welcomes him by giving him a dead chicken. He tells him to take it and use it in a time of emergency. He collects it and holds it, although he wonders what it can be used for. He asks Lu Kai what it is used for, and Lu Kai tells him that monsters like to eat corpses. So if the monsters are chasing after him, then he can throw the dead chicken at them. And run away. He now knows what it is used for, and he puts it inside his bag. The others call him to come quickly and tell him to stop wasting time. He tells them that he is coming soon and he runs to join them. They are to get to the other side of the falling city by climbing a rope, and he runs there to climb the rope to his destination. He climbs to the other side, and when he gets to the top of the fence, he sees something much more than what he has expected. What a scene! Monsters running around, some flying, some crawling. He sincerely doesn't need a person to tell him they are really in a death zone. Looking at the situation they are in, he comments, "What a scene!" Lukai assumes he is very weak and he isn't a good fit for that job. He tells him that he knows he is Pon Pon's friend and he doesn't wish for anything bad to happen to him. So he wants him to stay by his side, listen to his instruction, and if he does all those things, he can assure him that he will get back home alive. Despite knowing their strength, Zhang Zi says okay and implies that he will follow those instructions. The others try to hurry them up. They tell them that they don't have enough time for anything unnecessary and they should hurry up. The 5 of them walk into the ruins in hopes of safety. One of them, who thinks Zhang Zi is a burden and he's just a child who doesn't have the ability to be in the battlefield, voices his concerns. He tells Lu Kai that after they are done with that mission, he should find a way to let Zhang Zi return back to his normal life, and he shouldn't follow them to the missions again. He claims it is inconvenient to bring along a burden. He assumes that Zhang Zi is a burden. Lu Kai, who also thinks he has made the wrong decision, believes his colleague's words and tells him he is also thinking the same. They eventually get to the center of the fallen city. Lu Kai announces that they have arrived, but to their shock and contrary to what they had planned, they realize that the place doesn't have an entrance. They try to find the door out of the ruins, and they all look around to find the door of the museum. And Lu Kai asks if Fang Zi has found it. After a thorough search, one of them eventually finds the door to the museum, and he calls Lu Kai's attention to it. And in return, Lu Kai calls Lao Ba. During most of their several missions, the first person to work was Lao Ba. He was the one with the most strength and could break anything. So Fang Zi calls Lao Ba. Lao Ba clenches his hands together with the aim of destroying the stones around the entrance, so they can all gain entrance into the museum. He uses his hard fist to hit the rocks so the rocks will break. As he does so, the stones scatter around and it brings a mighty effect. He eventually creates a route for them to enter the museum. Lu Kai is proud of Lao Ba's strength, and he brags to Zhang Zi, telling him that Lao Ba is the strongest among them, and he has a strength point of 12 strength. They do not know that Zhang Zi's strength points are much more than that. Zhang Zi looks at them in awe. He thinks to himself that 12 strength is lower than his own. They all enter the museum. As they enter, Lu Kai announces to them that monsters love to hide in dark corners. And since the inside of that house is dark, there may be monsters inside of it, so they should all be extremely careful so they wouldn't fall prey to any monster. They all walk into the museum and they tiptoe around the place, trying to look for the painting they're seeking. They walk inside and they find a door. They go nearer to it and they open it. As they get to the door they are about to enter, Lu Kai points his light inside the door to be sure it's safe, and that's where they are going. He confirms that the door is safe. He tells them that this is the exhibition main hall, and that's where they will search for what they need. So everyone in the team should split up, and they should find the portrait. However, they should all be careful. Following his own orders, he also enters, and he points his light toward all the paintings in that room to be sure of the exact painting he needs. He looks at a painting to confirm and sees that the painting depicts people boating on a lake in spring. He looks at the title of the painting. It says boating on a lake in spring, and he contemplates if that is what he is looking for or not. Also, the other members of his gang search around the museum for the same reason. Another member of his team sees another painting titled A Gift to a Prince. He calls Lu Kai's attention to it, telling him he has found a painting on a gift to a prince, and asks him if that's the painting they are looking for. Lu Kai brings out his phone, and while still pointing his flash at one of the paintings, he uses the phone to check the picture of what his boss has given to him as the targeted painting. And he looks at the other paintings to see if it is indeed the same as the one he is looking for. He sees a painting that is familiar to the one on his phone. He grins with delight and he tells his colleagues that this is the painting they are looking for, and he has found it. After finding what one has been searching for, the next step is no doubt to carry it. So one of the members of the team goes nearer to the painting and instantly carries it. The mission seems so simple. Lu Kai takes the painting, rolls it up tightly, and puts it into a bag he is carrying. He turns to his colleagues and one of them says that the mission is a great success. Not only is the mission a success, but the mission is also very simple. Plus, they got an extra payment for that mission. Little do they know what is ahead of them. One of them says once he receives the money, he will visit the Yun Ding Club and play with some girls in the club. It seems like a fitting reaction to getting some free cash. They all stand around Lu Kai as he gently puts the painting in his bag. At that point, Zhongzi looks around and sees that they are just 4. He remembers that they were 5 when they entered the museum, and he figures they are missing someone. He calls their attention to it, telling them they are missing someone, and the others also notice. Fang Zi notices that a colleague of theirs, Steele, is missing. He instantly asks the others where they think Steele is. Lu Kai calls out for Steele, and he even goes the extra mile and calls his number, hoping that Steele will reply or respond to the calls. But all their efforts are in vain. Lao Ba wonders if it is possible for a whole human, like an adult, to suddenly disappear from their presence. Well, even if it's not possible, it seems it's happening now, and they all have to find Steele as they won't be able to leave there without him. However, despite the fact that their colleague is missing, Lu Kai feels that they should leave, and he tells them they can't wait there, hoping and praying for Steele to come out, because it's quite dangerous to stay there. He decides that it is more preferable that they leave a message for Steele in case he comes back, but for their own safety, it's better that they leave that place first. Following the command of their boss, they all turn to leave, but it seems it's too late, as they all see a monster with shining red eyes looking at them from the roof of the museum. Their successful mission turns into a dangerous one, and it becomes the survival of the fittest from that point forward. They all turn their attention to the monster on the roof. As human survival impulse strikes, they all run in the opposite direction, hoping to survive what's coming to them. Do you think they will survive? As they run, Zhongzi notices a sound. He turns a little, looking backward and wondering what the noise he hears is about. Suddenly, they all hear a sound. Behind them is calamity already as dust flies up. As they turn, they see the monster which has jumped down from the roof of the museum and has attacked them. Sadly and in fear, Lu Kai announces that they have eventually encountered a monster, despite how they tried to avoid it. Zhongzi looks at the monster and wonders what it is exactly. With great strength, the monster steps down, and his foot sounds like thunder. It looks so horrible and has multiple sharp teeth and 3 eyes all shining at them. They realize it's a second-level monster from the Devil's Cafe. The monster approaches them, and they're all terribly scared. Lao Ba, mindful of his great strength, reassures his colleagues that he can deal with the monster alone, and he tells them to go first, and he will deal with the monster and come afterward. He jumps as high as he can, and he attempts to hit the monster with his sword in his hands. He jumps toward the monster's face and stretches the sword forward to kill the monster with it. To his shock, the monster breaks the sword without much stress. He gets terrified, and he figures he has gotten more than he bargained for, and he is so scared. The monster's face turns red in anger. He is angry about the confrontation. Lao Ba stands in front of him with the handle of the broken sword in his hands. He throws the broken sword away, and he decides to fight with his hands. He clenches his 2 hands together, preparing to deliver a killing attack. Unfortunately, his killing attack can't even deliver a kill, as the monster shifts back to dodge it, and his velocity lifts plumes of dust again. The other members of the team look in awe. They all open their mouths in shock, considering how strong that monster turns out to be. Lu Kai tells them that the monster's skin is too thick. The monster delivers just 1 hit at Lao Ba, and Lao Ba collapses while the monster is still standing at his full strength. The others are looking at Lao Ba like he is nearly dead, and he is in reality severely injured. He goes to reassure his team that he is fine. He only broke his hands, as if that was not enough reason to be concerned. Their strongest fighter has broken his hands, and they are in the presence of a terrible level 2 monster with no hopes of escaping. Zhongzi looks at the scenario in front of them. He instantly concludes that the monster is terrifying. I have an issue with the fact that he's just becoming aware of that established fact. He says that Lao Ba, who weighs more than 200, was pushed into the air with just 1 punch from the monster. The monster roars in front of them, revealing all of their weapons and teeth. He also clenches his hands together to fight. The team stands in front of him, not knowing what to do. In fact, probably they are standing thinking of their death day. They are scared, and it's written on their faces. Zhongzi remembers the dead chicken that Lu Kai has given him. He brings out the dead chicken, considering that it is their last resort, and they do not have any other choice. He takes it and throws it at the monster, and fortunately, that throws the monster off balance, and he falls down immediately. As the monster falls, Lu Kai yells to his team to run. Well, that's a known fact, as it's a survival instinct. Just before they run as far as they can to leave that building, the monster gets its composure back, and this time he is much more angry about the dead chicken they had thrown at him, so he is furious. He goes right after them to destroy them. He runs after them as they all increase their velocity too. Feng is holding Lao Ba, who has gotten injured during the fight, and Lu Kai and Zhang Zi are running in front of them. Lu Kai gets to the door first. That's funny, considering that a leader should ensure his followers are fine first, but I guess his survival instinct kicked in faster. As Zhang Zi almost reaches the door too, he looks back. He sees that the monster is just an inch behind Feng and Lao Ba, and if he runs outside of that building too, they will no doubt lose Feng and Lao Ba. Realizing that he has no other choice, Feng comments shit and tells his master that they should leave first, while he stays behind and goes all out with the monster. He brings out fire from his hands, hoping to fight. He sends his fireballs at the monster, but the monster blocks it with several parts of his body. Lao Ba refuses to run away like a coward. He stays behind, encouraging Feng that his comrades, even if they die, they will die fighting together. He stays behind Feng as Feng uses his fireball at the monster. He stands there holding a bomb in his hands and preparing to attack the monster too. He tells Lu Kai to leave as he throws the bomb. He throws the bomb right into the stomach of the monster, and it has a great effect on the monster. The monster explodes, and Lu Kai and Zhang Zi see the fire behind them. Zhang Zi comments that they are madmen, as he doesn't understand why someone will sacrifice himself. Instead of wasting time to feel hurt by the death of his colleagues, Lu Kai encourages Zhang Zi that they should spare their feelings for the moment, and the first thing they should do is get out of that place first. Lu Kai holds Zhang Zi by his hands and drags him further. He reassures him that as long as they leave that tunnel, they should be safe. They both try to climb a pile of stones that is in their way. They eventually get to the door, and as Lu Kai looks outside, he sees another terrifying thing, and he screams, "What is that?" His eyes light up, signifying they see more trouble. To their shock, they see the same monster they had encountered inside the museum waiting for them outside the museum. I'm sure the first thought that will be in their mind at that moment is whether that monster is the same one they encountered before or if it's another one. They stand in front of the monster, not knowing what to do. As though that is not enough worry for them, as they look around, they see several other monsters walking towards them. They're in a dilemma. They can't go back to the museum, and outside the museum is another terror. They look at the fence of the falling city. At least if they can get that far, they will survive these calamities. But will they get that far? The two survivors of the terrible mission stand in the middle of the several second-level monsters. All the monsters make an attempt to go towards them, and they walk closer. Lu Kai, like the leader that he is, and considering that Zhang Zi is a friend to his cousin, tells Zhang Zi that the treasure they had come for is in the bag, so he should take the bag and he should leave. He tells Zhang Zi that he is putting his cousin into Zhang Zi's care from that moment henceforth. That looks like a farewell message, and it is necessary because he also doesn't think he will survive the terrors in front of him. Instead of accepting the idea of leaving, Zhang Zi shockingly refuses. He tells Lu Kai that if he leaves the fallen city, then they will be leaving together. At least he knows he is strong. He just doesn't know how strong he is, and if he is strong enough to conquer those monsters. They are outnumbered by the monsters, and it's suicide to think of fighting them. Lu Kai screams out loud as he prepares to fight for his life. He pulls out a gun and points it at the monsters to kill them. He sends the first set of bullets at the monsters, but it doesn't look like they are affected by the gun. He keeps firing the gun at them, calling them beasts and telling them to die and let them live. It's not by mouth, but by strength, so the monsters do not die. After receiving several angry fire bullets, the monster gets angry and prepares to attack. Lu Kai increases his speed, runs, and jumps on the monster's body speedily, and shoots him again, and the monster grunts in pain, and Lu Kai jumps down. Lu Kai refuses to back down. He increases his strength, jumps at the monster again, and he brings out the bomb that he has with him. He angrily throws the bomb at the monster with the last hope that it will destroy the monster. As the fire explodes, he turns his back and runs away so he will survive the burning fire. He breathes in relief that he's eventually destroyed one of the monsters, and he stands nonchalantly, not knowing that there is another monster right behind him waiting to attack him. The monster prepares his sharp claws to make his attack, and fortunately, Zhang Zi notices that the monster is behind him, and he calls Lu Kai's attention to the monster, telling him to watch out. Lu Kai immediately turns his back, and he sees the monster. He is shocked. He is tired, he is afraid, he is terrified. His face shows several messages. He doesn't know what more to do. And at that point, it seems like it is game over for him and Zhang Zi. He jumps away from the monster and staggers to the back. He falls on his back after the monster hits him for the first time. He tries to summon his strength and courage back, hoping to fight more, so he sits on the floor to prepare. "Damn it!" he exclaims. At that point, he knows the reality he is in. The monster is coming closer to him, and he is on the ground with not much strength to stand up and fight again. He acknowledges in his mind that he will die, but asks the question to remind himself of his doubts about death. The monster is ready to attack and kill Lu Kai, who looks at him from far off, and he resigns himself to his fate. Suddenly, Zhang Zi, the same Zhang Zi who has been concealing his strength, decides to turn up. He sees that Lu Kai will die, and he also decides to fight. He stands up and clenches his fists together to fight. Considering the level of his strength, which is much more than that of a normal human, you can be assured of the injury he will inflict on the monster. Just before the monster hits Lu Kai, Zhang Zi hits him. The flow of his strength, the power of his energy, and all of his manpower make the blow as heavy as that of a sword. The monster flies off immediately. Lu Kai, who is on the ground, is shocked. He never in his life could have expected that Zhang Zi, who he has thought will be a burden to him, is actually that strong. As Zhang Zi prepares to face the monster, Lu Kai looks at him in awe from behind, giving the vibe of, "Who the hell is this strong little kid?" Upon realizing that his death day has been shifted forward, Lu Kai calls the monster a bastard, and Zhang Zi forges ahead to hit the monster, who is already scared of him and his strength. He hits the monster with his fist, and it gives the effect of monstrous thunder. The monster falls off his back. Lu Kai is shocked. He comments that Zhang Zi is actually that strong. He says that just a hit from Zhang Zi sends the monster flying into the sky, and that's incredible. Even the monster is shocked. The boy looks so little, and no one could have assumed that he had that much strength. Zhang Zi remains humble about his strength. He tells Lu Kai that hitting a monster isn't a big issue, but he just thinks he is not suited to face monsters with that much force on his own. He holds his hands, showing that he is also shocked that he could inflict that much injury. He tells Lu Kai, who is also reassured that they will survive, that there are too many monsters there, and if all the monsters come at them at once, there is little or no chance that they will survive at all. And he is not wrong. Irrespective of his fear, Lu Kai tells him not to worry. He tells him that the monsters are from the Devil's Cave, and monsters from the Devil's Cave have a distinct characteristic, which is that they don't snatch each other's prey, meaning that they do not come at their prey together. And unless the monster they are fighting at that moment gives up, the others won't attack them, let alone attack them together. The monster which has targeted them looks at them, and he prepares to fight again. Zhang Zi prepares his fist and stands in front of the monster, telling Lu Kai that if his conclusion is true, then he feels much at ease. The monster comes at Zhang Zi again, and Zhang Zi, who is now proud of his strength, comments that he may be strong, but he should ask himself if he is indeed fast enough to attack him. Just as the monster attempts to come nearer, Zhang Zi hits him again in the abdomen. The hit sends the monster flying again. Without taking a rest or break, Zhang Zi prepares to inflict his next injury on the monster. He hits him terribly, telling him to die. The hit is ferocious and the monster collapses. After he hits the monster with his first strike, Lu Kai tells him he has done a good job and that the strike is very beautiful. He appreciates Zhang Zi's strength. At least that's the only reason he is still alive at the moment. The monster refuses to die. He is there and ready to fight more, and neither is he ready to give up on that fight. He stands up again and attempts to hit Zhang Zi, who is standing in front of him and anticipating his attack. The monster walks nearer to Zhang Zi and gives him a terrible hit. Zhang Zi, who has figured out his moves, quickly takes a step backward to dodge the hit, and he survives. Upon getting back to a comfort zone, he thinks of his strategy. He says that the hit which the monster had used just now is an extremely risky move, but the good thing is he had also figured out the move beforehand, and he had dodged it. He says that the good thing is that he is also quick enough. After that hit, the monster dies and gives up the fight. After killing the first monster, Zhang Zi breathes a breath of relief and comments that one of the monsters is down, and there are still 3 monsters left for him to fight. The thing about the Devil's Cave monster is that they will come at him one by one, and it will make it easier for him to defeat them without much effort. He comments that he must defeat all the monsters that day, no matter how long it takes him or what it takes. After killing the first monster, his confidence doubles up. and he feels much more proud of his strength and energy. He prepares to fight, and suddenly the three monsters run toward him. He stops to think of what is going on, and he sees a boot coming toward them. The body and the person in the knight's armor looks like a female, and a lady appears to him. She jumps right in front of him, and she jumps to attack the monster without thinking of the risk attached to it. He looks at her in awe as she disappears from his front in a flash. She swings her sword without stress, and she hits the monsters all together. She looks so strong and courageous, and she fights with all of her might. In split seconds, she attacks the monsters, and their red crystals fly around after most of them secure severe injuries. The monsters themselves look very terrified. They scream, and their eyes light up, considering the risk in front of them. She stands in front of one of the monsters courageously, with her long red hair flying behind her. The monster attempts to attack her, but she swings away and dodges the attack. She angrily uses one of her techniques, and she swings her legs at the monster. She gives the monster a critical hit, and the monster is humbled and injured. She jumps down and rests on one of her knees with one of her hands on the floor, and the other flying in the sky as the monster eventually collapses and dies. After watching the superb display of pure power and strength, Zhongzi stands there. He is shocked. He has never seen such strength before. He comments that the woman is so powerful, and that the kick she delivered that caused the critical hit must have been more than 2,000 carries, which is equal to around 2,646 pounds or 1,200 kilograms. After killing the monsters in front of him, the lady comes to him. She calls him Kid. He stands beside her fearfully. He looks at her, but he stammers, and he doesn't know what to say. He says the word you, but he doesn't know what to say to conclude his words. He looks around and he sees that she has come in her car. She is standing right there beside her car, while he and Lu Kai are behind her. She tells him to hurry up and get into the car with Lu Kai as some monsters are coming to her to fight her, and she is getting ready to destroy them. At that point, he doesn't have to pretend that he has superpowers or is stronger than he really is. He doesn't argue with her. He just tells her, all right. He goes to carry Lu Kai, who is incapacitated, and he tells Lu Kai to get into the car. The rider in the car, which has arrived with the young girl, calls the lady. He calls her his captain, and he tells her that another cluster of monsters is coming and she should join them in the car before it's too late. The monsters forge at the young lady. She runs to the car so she can escape with the others before they come nearer. She successfully enters the car and tells the driver to go before the monsters get nearer. The driver gears up the car and he puts it at high speed considering that monsters are around them. The car takes off in a flash. The car drives away and they eventually outspeed the monsters who can't keep up with the car, but they keep chasing them with the aim of keeping up. The soldier driving the car tells his captain that if they lead such a big cluster of monsters to the city wall, then it will be very bad if they invade Tianfang City. Zhongzi keeps looking at the back to see how far or how near the monsters are to them. So the captain tells him to stop watching. He turns to her, asking her what she had said. So she tells him that if he doesn't want to die, then he should help out. She tells him to get up and get to work because she doesn't want to feel like she has saved him in vain. She brings out a bag and shows him the content of it. He doesn't know what the bag contains and asks her what's in the bag, and she tells him the bag contains flashbangs. She tells him to throw all the flashbangs behind them and scare away those monsters. He is scared, but he has to do it regardless. So he turns to the back and sees all the fearful monsters behind them, and he stands in the open space in the car with the captain, and they both throw the flashbangs at the monsters. They keep throwing until they scare off the monsters, and they eventually drive out of the fallen city and come out through the fence. He is scared and tired as he stands there with her. The monsters are still after them despite being out of the fence. They both pick up more pieces of the flashbangs and they throw them at the monsters respectively. The flashbang hits one of the monsters and it explodes. The monsters surrender and they stop the chase as the car eventually zooms off. After the calamity has eventually stopped and everything has become peaceful, Zhongzi now has the strength to think of the woman that saved him. So many questions are running through his mind. He wonders who the woman is, why she saved him, and how she has so many weapons and supplies to counter the monsters. As everything becomes calm, the captain decides to inquire about what Zhongzi and Lu Kai are doing in the fallen city. She asks them what in the world they did do, and how they were able to attract so many monsters from the Devil's Cave. Lu Kai quickly chips in with a formulated answer which is obviously a lie. He tells them that they didn't do anything, and they just wanted to return home to pay respect to their late family members who had died. And they didn't expect that they would encounter so many monsters from the Devil's Cave. It makes his lie so much more presentable. He appreciates them for saving him and calls Zhang Zi his younger brother. So he thanks them for saving him and his younger brother. The captain deliberates about what he has said. She concentrates her questions on Zhang Zi, asking him what his name is, and says that back then when he was fighting the monster, he was very brave and agile, which is a very admirable quality. He tells her his name is Zhang Zi, and she tells him to listen carefully to her. She tells him that in the future he should not for any reason go to the enemy-occupied zone. She says it is extremely likely that he will lose his life in doing so, and the only reason he may not die is if he becomes a magic domain fighter. He accepts the advice, and he says in his mind that although he doesn't know the lady and she has a mysterious identity, it seems that she doesn't have vile intentions towards them. She tells them that the city wall is right in front of them, and if any one of them is injured, they should quickly get treatment from the hospital as they will be leaving them there. They appreciate them, but they still have questions in their minds about them, especially the question of who they are. They come down from the car, and Zhang Zi helps Lu Kai to walk. He asks Lu Kai as they walk away if he knows who they are, but Lu Kai says he isn't sure. He says they appear to be magic domain fights, and if they are not, they wouldn't have defeated those monsters from the Devil's Cave so easily. He continues and tells him that it's too bad that his backpack was torn by those monsters, and they have lost the scroll too. This means there is no money for them and their mission is useless. Lu Kai tells him it is fate in order to calm him down. He tells Zhang Zi to let it be. At least they are able to return alive and they didn't lose their lives. So that's enough to be grateful for. Later that day, Zhang Zi walks away, saying that the day was so risky and torturous. He looks at his phone and comments that if the woman hadn't appeared to save them, then they would have died in the fallen city too. He says it was a pity that the scroll which they had gone for was lost, and they had come back empty-handed. He walks on the stairs and mistakenly hits a man with a face mask and a cap coming towards him. He apologizes to the man and continues walking. As he walks, he figures that the person's physique is so familiar, and the man also readjusts his cap as he walks away. Zhang Zi stops and looks at the man again. He imagines who the man could have been and thinks that it must have been Steele. He wonders if it could be him, and comments that he suddenly disappeared from the ruins, and shockingly, he is there now. He feels like intruding, and he decides that he will like to see where he is going, so he follows the random man who he thinks looks like Steele. As the man walks away from the stairs, he goes to the other side of the street and he starts running. Zhang Zi hides by the houses behind him and looks at him. When the coast is clear, he follows the man again, and he follows him until they cross the road. He hides from him to ensure the man doesn't figure that he's being followed. And he watches as the man calls a person. The man calls the person his boss, and Zhang Zi realizes the man is Steele, and he is most likely the one behind all of their attacks. Steele tells the boss that he is at their designated hideout and claims that he isn't being followed. Little does he know that Zhang Zi is behind him. Two huge men come to meet him. They welcome him and ask him if he has brought what they want. Steele brings out a pack behind his back and shows the men, telling them that he brought what he had promised them to bring. Just as he gives it to them, he asks them for the money they had also promised him. And they give him the bag with the money, and they also reassure him that he won't find a penny missing from the money they had promised him. It seems like a contract which had been negotiated even before the trip, and Steele had risked the lives of all the colleagues just so he could steal from them and take their gains. One of the men tells him he likes him and says that Steele is vicious and merciless. The man says that he will take the $3 million alone for himself. Steele had turned his back on the brothers he had worked with for more than 10 years, which shows how much of a ruthless person he is. Zhang Zi watches the whole conversation and sees everything. He is furious considering how they had all risked their lives for that painting. He calls Steele a bastard even though he doesn't leave his hiding place. The man opens the painting and sees it's exactly what he is looking for. After he confirms it, he tells his assistant to open the box of money. They show Steele the $3 million he has been promised. Steele drags the box of money from the man and turns his back on them, telling them that to survive, one must be ruthless. Well, it seems there is not much life for a betrayal, as a person who betrays must be betrayed. The man brings out his gun when Steele's back is turned. He cocks it and attempts to kill Steele. He points the gun right at Steele's head. When Steele turns, he sees the situation has turned against him. He confronts the man, asking him what is the meaning of what he is doing. The boss takes out a cigarette and smokes it as his assistant shoots his gun and kills Steele. After Steele dies, the boss repeats Steele's last words that to survive, one must be ruthless. He says the statement was well said, however, he is more ruthless than Steele, and he absolutely despises vile people like Steele. He turns to walk away with his assistant, leaving Steele in the pool of his own blood on the floor. Zhang Zi keeps watching all that is happening, and he is shocked that they just killed him with a gun to his head. He wonders who the boss Li, is, and thinks of what he should do next. Should he just leave first? He eventually leaves and goes home to meet his younger sister, who is scared and anxious that he hasn't been home. She opens the door at about the same time when he's running home, and she welcomes him cheerfully and with an open smile, asking him how he is, and how was the work he went to do. He tells her that she shouldn't even mention how his day was, as the day was so much for him that he can't say. He tells her it is a long story and they should go inside the house first. At about that time, the new neighbor comes out of the house, and his sister calls out for the man, calling him uncle. He turns to look at the man, asking her if that is the new uncle who sent them the apples. The man turns to greet him. He says he must be Zhang Feng's brother, and when Zhang Zi looks at the man, his scar looks exactly like the one that was on Boss Li's bodyguard. He covers his thoughts with a great smile, and he greets the man. He appreciates him for giving Feng apples. The man tells him it's no problem and they are neighbors, so they have to look out for each other. The man stretches his hand towards him, and before he receives the handshake, Feng jumps into the conversation, asking the man if he will join them for dinner that night. Zhang Zi stops her immediately. He apologizes to the man, telling him that he is too tired that day and they can find another time to have a meal together, then tells him they will be going inside the house. Before entering the house, Feng still cheerfully tells the man to try to eat with him whenever he is free. Zhang Zi drags her inside the house and angrily closes the door with a huge slam. The man wonders what has happened, and he stays in front of his door thinking. He wonders what could have gone wrong during his conversation with Zhang Zi for him to react that way. Inside the house, Feng tells her brother that she will start preparing dinner, but Zhang Zi is lost in thought. He wonders how his new neighbor would have the same scar as the bodyguard who killed Steele. He keeps thinking and tells Feng that he will be stepping out of the house for a bit. She asks him where he's going, considering that he had just returned home a few minutes ago. He tells her to remain home and that she shouldn't step out of the house at all. He claims he has to be certain about who their neighbor is, otherwise he and his sister would be in danger. He attempts to leave the house, and so the neighbor won't know he is out of the house, he jumps through the window and gets down. He walks through the balcony and goes toward the window of his neighbor's house. As he is about to enter, he finds that his neighbor has sprinkled white ashes on his balcony. That way, if anyone tries to break into his house, he will know through the signs it will show on the ashes. Fortunately for Zhang Zi, his agility is at 15 points, so it will be easy for him to avoid such a trap. He jumps through the white ashes and eventually gets to his window. He thinks about the man and concludes that an ordinary person wouldn't set up something like that if he doesn't have anything he is hiding. He jumps into the man's bedroom and he sees the bed. He figures his house has minimalistic decoration, and he even sprinkles white ashes on his balcony. He concludes that his new neighbor is definitely not your average neighbor. While searching through the house, he sees a box, and his inquisitiveness causes him to bring out the box and open it. In the box, he sees several papers. Upon reading through the paper, he sees it is a Magic Domain Fighter's Certificate of Authenticity. The certification reads as follows: Hang Hanfei, congratulations on passing the first order of the Magic Domain Fighter evaluation. This certificate is hereby issued. He figures the man is really Boss Li's bodyguard, and he is just pretending to be a nice uncle, and he has rented an apartment next door to his home. He looks at the certificate and wonders what the man is planning. He sits comfortably, forgetting that he is actually breaking into someone else's house. Suddenly, the man returns, and he enters into the house through the door, and he screams that Zhang Zi should come out.